Hello everyone, Eric Teacher here, bringing you more 20th century philosophy for your modern life. Today we will be talking about the philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. So let's talk about his big philosophical ideas and how we can use those ideas today. And without further hesitation, let's get right into it. All right, so who was Ludwig Wittgenstein? First, we should note that he was born in Vienna, Austria in 1889 to a very wealthy family. He originally studied engineering, but later became more interested in mathematics and philosophy. He attended Cambridge University and studied alongside the philosopher Bertrand Russell, who we talked about earlier, who Russell had recognized that Wittgenstein had a lot of talent for philosophy. Wittgenstein served as a soldier in World War I and worked on a lot of his earlier philosophical ideas. After finishing one of his books called the Tractatus, Wittgenstein believed that he had actually solved all the major problems of philosophy. And so he left academia. In other words, he left working alongside colleges and higher education. And he gave away much of his inherited fortune. He's, like I said, his family had a lot of money. He gave most of it away and just worked regular jobs, notably as a school teacher in the rural or countryside of Austria. But he did return later to develop new philosophical ideas, ones that were different than his earlier ones, and some he even disagreed with himself on. And his later ideas and thoughts actually were published after his death in 1951 under the title of Philosophical Investigations. Now let's talk about his key ideas. And so Wittgenstein's first key idea is based on his early works and studies, which is the picture theory of language. Now, Wittgenstein first believed that words were like pictures. And so a sentence is only meaningful if it shows the way things really are in the world. So in this way, if you were to paint out the sentence that you said, it would make sense. But if it would be impossible to paint out the sentence that you said because it doesn't show how the world really is, then he says it lacks meaning. It's not important. And so, for example, any kind of philosophical question about religion or ethics or anything in the metaphysical realm, like talking about the soul, the existence of God, he says these cannot be shown. And so we really shouldn't have to talk about them. And that's how he believed that he solved most of philosophical problems before his time, because he believed there was just no way to really talk about them at all. So we can move forward to things that can clearly be shown in the world. And so today we can see this when we're talking with each other. So when we say the cup is on the table, this is something that we can see in the universe. This is something we can picture in our minds. It has a place. But if you say the universe has a hidden purpose, then it's not only harder to picture, but it's almost impossible. So this falls outside of what Wittgenstein would call strict sense of meaning. So saying that the universe has a hidden purpose has no meaning. It doesn't mean anything. The cup is on the table, however, has exact meaning. And so he says those are the things we should focus on. And so Wittgenstein's second key idea comes from him rethinking his first idea and deciding that, well, maybe language is a little bit more complicated. So the problem Wittgenstein finds is that philosophers assumed that all language works the same way. Even he had originally thought that way. And then he realized that what we think language is just, it's naming things, right? Ball, table, chair, dog. But he realizes that it's more than that. So Wittgenstein says that we play these sort of language games, meaning that we will use words in unique ways, in special ways that actually change their meaning, sometimes just a little bit, sometimes a lot, to where it means the exact opposite. And so he says that words are not just one thing, one meaning, but they actually have these relationships and similarities. Our book describes it as thinking about going and seeing a large family reunion where you see your aunts and uncles, your grandma and grandpa, and your cousins, and noticing that even though everyone is different, they have a little bit of similarities between them. You might have the same eyes as your cousin, but you might have the same nose as your grandpa. And so he says that words are sort of like this in how we find them to be similar. And we can use the word game as an example, because there are so many different types of games. There's chess and football, hide and seek, tag, there are video games, and every single one of them is different, but they all have some similarities, because not all games have a clear winner and a clear loser. Not all games have the same rules, and some games really don't even have any rules. But still, they are all connected by this word of game, because they have what he would call the essence of game. They all have this feeling of what we think a game is. And so he calls this connection the pattern of resemblances. Not just every word has one essence, every word has one meaning. So again, what this means is that words do not have fixed meaning, is what Wittgenstein says, and that meaning actually comes from how we use them. In other words, use in context. Because we are always sort of playing a game with our language. And we see this every day today, because each day we play these games by how we say things. So think about if you were to say to somebody, oh, you look great today. And we can say it in a positive thing to mean, yes, the words that I just said mean you look great today. But I can also say it like, oh, yeah, you look great today. And even though I'm using the exact same words, how I say it changes the meaning. And we can also see it when we're not even talking, but when we're messaging or writing. If you were to send a text to somebody that says, how are you feeling? And they respond, I feel great. There we go again, the words I feel great mean I feel great. But if they send I feel great and they add these emojis after, then we know that they don't feel great. And that's what Wittgenstein is trying to say, is that our language cannot have one meaning, but we have to look at the connections and the patterns and the similarities in order to better understand what we're saying and to find meaning in our lives. And so Wittgenstein's very last key idea is that there is no private language. And to understand that, we need to look at how people thought of our minds before Wittgenstein. So many people believe that our minds were like sort of a private theater where our feelings and expressions and memories were all just playing privately in our own heads. Because of that, each person had these thoughts and feelings that were hidden and only connected to themselves. And we viewed language, because remember, Wittgenstein is very concerned with language. We use language as a way of labeling those private experiences. So, I feel this inside my mind, I will create language to express it. It is my own personal language. And so Wittgenstein argued that no, there is no truly private language. He says that words, the way that we use words, only makes sense because we use them publicly with other people and socially as a society. Even when we describe pain or emotions that are deeply personal to us, we are relying on shared expressions that everyone understands. I have here, for example, like to describe pain, ouch, or even the word pain itself, or sad. We use these so that others understand. It is something that is not private. It is something there to connect us specifically to other people and other people's experiences. It is not private. It is not my own. And he goes further to argue that if everybody just had their own private language going on in their heads to describe their own thoughts and feelings, then we wouldn't be able to communicate how we feel at all, because we wouldn't have a word to give that feeling that is in our mind. So how can we use this today? Now, even when we are describing these inner feelings, like, for example, on a daily basis, we can say, I feel worried. And we use those words because other people recognize. They're able to connect with us when we say words that they understand. And this shows that our minds are not just sealed off theaters. We have language so that everybody is able to access our thoughts and feelings. And this is important because we need public language to express our experiences and to connect with other people and to grow as a society and to grow as people, because it is sharing that helps us to gain knowledge. So everyone, be like Wittgenstein and be aware of the language you're using, and understand that language is not just about naming things, but it is a very complex relationship between our minds connecting to other people's minds, and that we play these sort of games with them. Anyway, everyone, that is all the time we have for today. I will see you in the next video, and until next time, goodbye.